Today's flip are these two White Clad Icebox Replicas. I believe these were popular around the 1980s, and I picked this set up for $30, and we're going to flip them for a profit.
I absolutely love flipping these little side tables. If you can believe it, this is going to be the 8th time that I have flipped a set of these. Whenever I see them listed in my area for less than $50 and in pretty good condition, I pick them up because I know with just a couple days worth of work, I can sell them for around $200. And this set is in excellent condition, so it's going to be a quick and easy flip. One of my secrets for flipping vintage pieces of furniture is I always make sure and I make note of where the hardware comes from, even which screw comes out of which screw hole. It's going to make your life so much easier if you put everything back where it came from once the piece is finished and the hardware is nice and clean. I like to recycle these little pieces of foam that come in some of the packages I receive to keep track of my hardware and where they go.
Now that we've cleaned it, we're going to sand off the existing finish from the top and the bottom trim. Now there's really 4 different ways you can do this. One, you can just purchase an inexpensive sanding block and some sandpaper and use muscle power to sand off that old finish. Or if you have an orbital sander, you can use an orbital sander with either sandpaper or the sanding nets that have become popular. This piece, it's pretty dry and it doesn't feel like it has a thick layer of varnish or top coat on it. So I'm thinking probably a 120 grit would be a good place to start. You can also use your carbide scraper. This is a tool that has a sharp carbide blade here that you just scrape across the top of the furniture to remove the finish. It actually doesn't scratch it like you think it would. It does require a lot of muscle power though. And finally, the 4th way is using a chemical stripper. I'm not a big fan of chemical strippers unless I'm removing layers of old paint, just because of the fumes, the mess, and the cleanup time. So I'm going to get started on this one with my orbital sander.
For this set, I'm going to do a paint and stain combo. That way you can watch and learn how to do both techniques. So I only need to use my sander to remove the finish from the top and the bottom boards where I'm going to apply the stain. For the bodies of the boxes, I'm just going to do what's called scuff sanding, where you just use like a 120 grit sandpaper to kind of remove the shiny finish, but you're not actually sanding down to bare wood. That's a great strategy to make sure that your paint will adhere. I'm going to finish up the sanding process by using a sanding block to sand around the top of each of the pieces where it's curved. Now I don't have to get all of the stain out of that little crease where the side meets the top, because a little bit of variation in color can actually add some character to the piece. If you're following along at home on a project, you're going to find that you're going to be cleaning constantly after every step. Once I've completed all of the sanding, I'm coming back over the entire piece of furniture with a warm, damp rag to get all of the dust, any dirt, or any oils that I may have gotten on it from my hands. Okay, now it's time to prep for paint. So I'm going to give it one more cleaning with a degreaser. This is a pre-paint cleaner by Farmhouse Paints, but you can really use any type of a degreaser. Then I'm going to tape off the top and the bottom so that we don't get paint on the areas that we want to stain. And for the paint, I have chosen a very dark blue, almost black. Since I'm going a darker color and this paint does contain a primer in it, I'm not going to bother priming. If you choose to go a lighter color, you'll probably want to put a primer on first to make sure that there's no bleed through, and also to lower the number of coats of paint that you'll need to use to cover the darker one. This is by Wise Owl. It's a 1-hour enamel, and it does have a primer and a top coat built in. But you pick a color, you pick the paint that's right for you. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comments. I told you I was going to do a lot of cleaning. Proper prep is really what makes sure you get a beautiful finished project. Now it's time to apply some painter's tape. I'm just going to put pieces of tape around the bottom where the stained wood base will meet the painted side. I'm probably not going to tape the top just because I'm comfortable freehand painting and nobody's really going to see it underneath, but tape as much as you need. Okay, I love this little paintbrush by Zebra. I like these paintbrushes that are angled that I can hold in my hand. They really help prevent wrist pain. And I'm just going to start applying my product. You'll notice that I always go in the direction of the wood grain. I like to start at the top and then move down and then finish up with one long stroke, making sure that I get any drips or any areas where I may have applied a little bit of extra paint. Now you're not going to get a thorough coverage on your first coat. You just want to get it on nice and smooth, not too heavy. You don't want it to drip. You just want to get a nice, smooth, even base coat, and it's not going to always be pretty to start with. You really have to trust the process. Make sure that you always read the instructions on the type of paint that you're using and allow proper dry time in between coats. Now this is called a 1 hour enamel because it does dry within 1 hour, but they recommend a 2 hour time frame before putting on your second layer of paint. So now I've put on my second layer of paint and you can see how beautiful these are looking. It's a really dark navy, such a rich color. And you can see how the second coat makes such a huge difference in terms of you can no longer see the color of the wood coming through. However, you still get that texture of the wood grain, which is one of the things I like about doing these little ice boxes. Same thing with a lot of furniture pieces that are natural wood. The wood grain coming through the paint is okay. I think that's what makes it beautiful. Here's a little painter's tip. While you're waiting for your paint to dry, take your paintbrush, put it in a plastic baggie, and then set it inside your refrigerator. This will prevent the paint from drying, so you don't have to clean your brush in between applying coats. While the body of the piece is drying, this is a good time to paint the doors or the drawers of a piece that you might be working on. Use the same exact process with cleaning, prepping, and painting multiple coats. Another trick is to turn your pieces upside down when you do your final or your second coat of paint. What this does is it ensures that you don't miss any spots. It gives you an opportunity to look at the grain from a different direction and make sure that you've got a really smooth, thorough paint job with no missing areas. It's really frustrating when you're loading a piece into your customer's vehicle and you see a spot that you missed, and this little trick is going to prevent that from happening. Once your final coat is completely dried, you can go ahead and remove any of the painter's tape so that you can move on to staining the trim. And there is nothing more satisfying than when the tape comes off and you have that beautiful, even, straight painted line. Now we're going to apply the stain to the tops and the bases. I am using all water-based products for this project. I love water-based products because they're easy to use, easy to clean up, and they don't have harsh fumes. So what I'm doing is I am applying the stain. It is called Early American, and I'm using a little sponge. I picked these up in packs of 6 at the Dollar Tree, and they work very well for applying stain because they kind of apply it and remove the excess at the same time, but you still do have to go over it with a lint-free rag to get any of the excess stain so it doesn't puddle and cause streaking. I'm going to go ahead and do that little back edge and the front edge at the same time. So this is such a beautiful color, and I think it complements this blue, and it's a neutral color as well that will go well in many homes with many different types of furniture. So we're just going to go ahead and put on our even coats of stain. You'll notice once again I go in the direction of the wood grain always. Put it on nice and smooth, and then immediately come back in and remove any of the excess. Now if you're using an oil-based stain or a gel-based stain, make sure that you read the instructions, and of course with any of the gel-based or oil-based you might want to wear a respirator because they do let off a lot of toxic fumes. Even with the water-based, I only use it outdoors, and I always make sure that there's plenty of ventilation. So while the stain is drying, now is a good time to clean up our hardware. I like to use a little bit of Barkeeper's Friend. I just give it a quick shine with these towels, and this removes any grime, it removes tarnish, and makes sure that it's nice and shiny again. This set was in really beautiful, clean condition, so there's not a lot of dirt to remove on them. However, if you're working on furniture and the hardware is really dirty, I recommend boiling it for about 15 minutes in a water vinegar solution, and that will remove any of the old grime and dirt. This set came with shelves, and I think that they're going to look really cute with this peel and stick wallpaper. I absolutely love this pattern, and the blue is going to go perfect with it. Now, the shelves are just a tiny bit wider than the wallpaper, but because they fit inside the cabinets, I don't think that's going to be a problem, and I think it's still going to be aesthetically pleasing. I cut the wallpaper about an inch bigger than the size of the wood so that it will wrap over the front and the back of the shelf. And then after I stick it to the wood, I'm going to go ahead and secure it with some staples. This way there's no concern about it ever coming loose or peeling away from the wood. I think the little touches like this are what makes your piece stand out and sell quickly. I only used one coat of stain to get the color that I wanted, and after it had dried thoroughly, now I'm going to apply my Polycrylic top coat in a warm satin. This is going to prevent it from getting water stains and hopefully keep the surface in beautiful condition for many years to come. You can use a brush, you can use a sponge, you can use a foam roller to put on your top coat. I would just recommend practicing with each of them to find the technique that works the best for you, always allowing to dry thoroughly between coats. Do a really gentle sanding with about a 400 sandpaper, and I apply 3 coats to the tops of my pieces and typically only 1 or 2 to the body. However, because I used an all-in-one paint and this paint does not scratch, I am not going to apply top coat to the bodies of these pieces. Every step of the way, I'm always looking to make sure that there's nothing I missed. When I put the doors back on, I found that I didn't have a very thorough coat of paint around the edges, so I'm just going to go in and do a little touch-ups. And because I had not applied a top coat, you're not even going to be able to see where I touched up. You always want to make sure that you do any final touch-ups with your paint before you apply your top coat. My favorite part of refinishing these is putting the iconic white clad labels back on. These really just make these pieces stand out and let the buyers know exactly what they are. So now I'm just going to take a few pictures. I'm not going to do any fancy staging. I'm just going to let the pieces speak for themselves. But I would love to know in the comments what you think of my color choices. If you are going to follow along and flip a set of furniture, please let me know how it turns out. And if you need any help along the way, just send me a message. This has been Carmen with Painted and Planted. Thank you for being a subscriber.